More History with Bruce Craig and David Hill, Part 2, taken from VHS tape.
Hello, I'm David Hill. Welcome to Caldwell County Today. Recently we had Bruce Craig on the show, and Bruce brought a lot of the old postcards depicting a lot of the shots of downtown Lenoir and different parts of the city. Well, we're going to have Bruce back again with us today because, as we talked about in the first show, he has lots of memorabilia regarding Lenoir and Caldwell County. But before we start today's show, we have a couple of corrections to make from the first show. There were so many people watched it that Bruce actually got a lot of phone calls that helped us better identify some of the locations that we talked about in the first show. So Bruce, let's just take a moment or so to talk about some of the places that perhaps we misidentified in that first show.
Okay, the one that I got the most phone calls on was the M.M. Courtney house. Now, when we looked at that postcard and the house up beside the Hedrick house, they were real similar. And I'm thinking those two houses might have been built at the same time. But the M.M. Courtney house was where, if you came out of the front door of the Blackwelder Hospital, looking straight across at the parking lot, that's where the M.M. Courtney house sat. Matter of fact, on the other side, on another corner, was where his brother's house was, and that house is still standing today. The other correction was the house up on North Main Street beside of the Ebony Funeral Home. And I called it the Fritz house, and this was a mental error on my part. It's actually known as the Kurtz house. So those were the two mistakes that we might have made. One was misinformed, and one was a lack of my ability to think clearly at that time.
Yeah, but that's what's so nice about television, though. We can say those kinds of things and always have the opportunity to come back and
correct them. Yes, sir.
All right, Bruce, we've got a whole bunch of new stuff today, and I think we first want to start with a couple of pictures and or postcards that you got from 1910. So what are we going to be looking at with these first couple of pictures, or postcards actually?
Okay. The two that are real similar, one's looking south and one is looking north. And those pictures were taken as the monument had been set. Now, this monument was dedicated on June the 3rd of 1910, and both of these postcards are postmarked June of 1910 on the same day that they had the dedication of it. Now, it might have been set a few months before that, but, you know, that's when they had the dedication.
Yeah, so the monument actually, and obviously was set sometime before June 3rd, 1910, because they had the ceremony.
Right.
Of the monument on June 3rd, 1910.
And the other postcard is the Confederate Monument, Lenoir, North Carolina, unveiled June the 3rd of 1910. And the postmark on it is June the 13th of 1910. It went to somebody in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and again, it's each of these postcards, one was sent to somebody in Detroit, Michigan, one to somebody up at Appalachian Training School, and then this one to somebody in Pennsylvania. But we're lucky that people were able to keep these cards over the years, and very fortunate that you've been able to come into possession of them.
Absolutely.
All right, Bruce, you have one more thing here that has a picture of the monument on it. What is this?
Well, I think it, to me, is one of the most prized possessions. This was handed out along with the postcards, and it's a button that you would pin on your shirt. And it actually says on there, the Caldwell Confederate Monument, June the 3rd of 1910. Now, how many of these things are around, I have no idea. I have seen 3, and I know where the other 2 are. But that's all that I've ever seen of
But these actually were handed out to people who were probably in attendance at that ceremony?
At the ceremony, and it was handed out. Yes, sir.
All right. You've got something else here regarding the Centennial. Of course, in 1991, I guess, Lenoir had its sesquicentennial, 150-year celebration. But this this actually was the Centennial celebration. What is this?
This was a pen, and I think it's more or less homemade, but there were a lot of them, and they were handed out to the people on the square on their centennial of 1841 to 1941. And I cannot get the significance of the oxen and the wagon. I guess that's where they started out as the time, and then they just put the date of 1941 on it. And if you'll see, it has a homemade pin or a little safety pin that's just been glued into it.
Yeah, if we can get a shot of the back of that thing, actually it's just a regular old safety pin that's been inset into the back of the pin of the little badge.
Now there was a lady here in Lenoir that she was at this ceremony, and she actually gave me that pin, and she gave me a few other things, and I would like to, publicly thank her, and it was Anna Ruth Bolick. She gave me a lot of things on Lenoir and Caldwell County, so she's helped me out a bunch.
All right, I have, I guess everybody's heard the little saying, don't take any wooden nickels, but these actually are wooden nickels.
Absolutely. And it has to do with the coming home of the soldiers of World War II, and it was in 1946, and they handed this money out to people on the square, and there's also a book that they handed out that told all of the people that died in the war and those that came home, and it listed all the people from Caldwell County that went to World War II. And these things here, they handed them out, and you could redeem them at a local bank, which was either the Union National or the Bank of Lenoir, and get money that you could spend at a local merchant. And they actually say that.
You actually could spend these wooden nickels at a local merchant's place of business.
Well, you would turn that in to the bank, and they would actually hand you the money to spend.
I know, and they are in different denominations. This is one wooden nickel. This one is 2 wooden nickels, and then you have 2 here that are 5.
And if you'll
wooden
notice,
nickels.
on some of them, one says Purple Heart.
Yes, 2 of them
Right.
say Purple Heart.
It's like that some were for those that didn't come home, and some were for those that did come home. That's my impression. Now, I might be right on this, and I could be out in left field. I don't know, but that's my...
A Purple Heart is given to somebody who is wounded.
Wounded at least, or maybe
Now,
deceased.
this one says, this Purple Heart series says, issued in tribute to all those who suffered for their country. And then the homecoming celebration was September 22nd through, is that 26th or 28th?
Yeah, something like that.
1946. And it does say on the back of it, and maybe we can get a close-up of that, but on the back of each one of them is numbered. And it says, this certificate is issued as a souvenir of the Caldwell County Homecoming Celebration. It is exchangeable in trade at any store in Lenoir and is redeemable in cash on or before September 25th, 1946 at Union National Bank and Bank of Lenoir. So,
And I have about 6 of those, or maybe 7, I can't remember, but, how many of those were saved?
yeah, probably not very many.
And Anna Ruth Bolick saved those from that ceremony. She didn't turn them in, and she was a young girl at that time.
Well, good for her.
Good for her.
for us.
Yes.
So we do, there truly were wooden nickels.
Absolutely.
I've heard people talk about wooden nickels, well, for a long time, and now I know that they truly
were.
had wooden nickels. What are these keys that we have?
Well, from the time of Mayor Tate all the way through the present mayor, the mayors were handed keys to where they could hand out to the public. And they had 2 sizes during two administrations. One was Earl Tate, and the other was Harper Bell Jr. And they had the small keys, but they also had a key that is real similar, and it could be exactly like this one, I'm not sure. But on those two mayors, I only have the small keys. This key here, who is on Robert Gibbons, who was mayor for a long time. And then I have the keys on David Barlow and Jerry Brooks. There is one key that I am missing, that if someone out there happened to have it, oh, I would love to get it. And that is on Joe Steele. He handed out some of these keys to people. Yeah. And, you know, it was supposed to be to events, special events, or dignitaries. But, you know, I think they were handed out to some of the people sometimes because there were a few of them around.
But this one is from Harper Bell, the key to the city of Lenoir. This one is Earl Tate, mayor, key to the city of Lenoir.
And that Earl Tate key was found in the projection booth of the Center Theater. They were remodeling up there, and a guy found that key in the wall.
Wow.
So, yeah, this stuff can come from strange and weird places. But I'm just glad people find it, and that I have my name and everything out there to where they can get it to me.
All right, Bruce, in our first show, we had a lot of postcards, but you had a lot more postcards that we didn't get to look at. So you did bring some more of those with us. So I think what we'll do is we'll take a look at those now. All right, in this very first postcard we've got here, we're looking at, it looks like the W.E. Shaw building to me. Of course, that's what I would know it today as.
Right. But this is the Caldwell Motors. Not sure when it started. It was there in, you know, the way I understand it, Mr. Hinkle had a harness shop and a wagon shop and horses, because he ran a delivery service out of this building at one time. And then upstairs they had different things. They had events up there, and Bill and I were talking that during the summertime that if the horse is in the bottom and the stink went up and it got hot up there, that could be you know, pretty funny to the people. But that is the W. Shaw Furniture Company today. And but that is Caldwell Motors, one of the earliest motor companies that we had in Lenoir. They did sell Chevrolets and Dodges and Chrysler products.
Okay. All right, this one says corner Hickory Street, South, Lenoir. Where is this?
Okay, this is the Pioneer Library on the right-hand side right there, the one's covered, the building covered in the vines. Actually, I don't know where the name Hickory Street came from. You're looking south on Mulberry Street right there. And if you notice the cinder block or the cement fence to the left, that's where the city park was. That's where the farmer's market is today, right there in that parking lot.
Okay.
So that's where that was. And actually, I don't know where Hickory Street came from, but anyhow, that's Mulberry today.
Okay. All right, now we've got a picture of an early fire truck, it looks like.
This is the earliest that we know of the Lenoir Fire Department. On the side of the wagon, it does say Lenoir number 1. And where this was located, if you look at the left-hand corner, you will see part of the Caldwell Motors building. And it was to the right of that. Actually, there's one in between, but where H&R Block is today, right in there, their little office, okay. That's where the city owned that building. They held court up on the second floor, and the fire department was on the lower section right there.
I think there was some attempt by somebody to identify one of these people. It looks like the guy in the middle, his last name was Hefner.
Mm-hmm. And that's all we know.
Perhaps he went by the initials O.D. Hefner, but that's evidently the gentleman in the middle of this picture.
Now, I have to thank Dave Bumgarner. He is a retired fireman, and he had this card, and we'll see one other one. He actually gave me 3 postcards to go in this collection, so I really appreciate him.
Okay, now I think the next 3 postcards we're going to look at are, I think, about the same shot, but obviously different periods of time.
Right. The first one was in the first show, and I actually talked about it looking like the old West days. This was 1907, or that was the postmark, and it's South Main Street looking north. That's the first card. All right, you see the awning and the buildings and everything. Well, and this is what is known as a white card. And they had white cards, linen cards, and photograph cards. That was the 3 basic types of postcards you had. The second card you're looking at is a colored photograph on a white card, and it's looking in the same direction, but it's about 10, 12, 14 years later. This is probably in the 20s. That's what the cars look like, and it does say that it's Main Street looking north, Lenoir, North Carolina, and it is unpostmarked. I don't know.
Now we do have a sign on that that I guess middle right building says Dula something.
Want you?
Dula want you?
That's what it says. And I had really researched trying to find a Dula's jewelry store. And that's the only thing I can figure out. And I'm thinking that if you turn this over, there was something that I seen on one of these cards real similar to this that says produced by Dula's jewelry store.
Okay.
And the third card is looking in the same direction, but they've just really got it colored up and fancied up. It shows the monument. And this is in the 30s. And one thing you'll notice that in the background back there, you'll see the tower that now the First Baptist Church has been built up on North Main Street.
Yeah. And we can just barely see the corner of the awning on the very center right.
That was in the first picture.
the-
Now, if you look also on right past that, you see a sign that says Cafe and Hotel.
Yes.
That was the Gateway Cafe, and there was a hotel actually above that restaurant right there.
Okay.
Caught on fire at one time, and then they closed the hotel part down.
Now what would be in that location right now?
That is a vacant lot right
Yeah.
now. That's the vacant lot. There's 2 vacant lots on Main Street there. And one was where the Dula studio was that was in the second photograph.
Yeah.
And the other one is where the Gateway Cafe was. Those are the 2 vacant lots that have been torn down.
Okay. All right. It just says Public School Building, Lenoir.
Well, this is Lenoir High School. Now, we know that this postcard's made up because this sidewalk was never there. This was always on the high end of the wall that was down around the street down there. And that just, I brought that one to show that some of these things can be made up to a certain extent. The building looks the same, but the sidewalk in the entrance was never there. It was either in the middle or on the far left over there was the entrance to Lenoir High School. But this is in the 30s, this card here is.
Okay. Now, this is another picture of Lenoir High School.
But this is the band building. And this card right here also is in the 30s. It's a linen postcard, and it is showing the Lenoir High School band building. That was, well, that band was known world over as being one of the best bands.
Yeah. It says the Lenoir High School Band, the oldest high school band in the state of North Carolina, has its own outstanding fireproof building. This popular high school band has appeared on all the campuses of the larger colleges for men in the state, and has also appeared in motion pictures, done radio broadcasting, and made photograph records. So they were very popular.
They really were. And they played in several governors' inauguration, because I was in that band, and I was in one of the governor's inauguration down in Raleigh, marched in that band.
Okay.
And I was real lucky. I was a drummer, and I got to where I would carry an extra stick with me. And I dropped one of my sticks in that parade. But I reached inside my uniform and pulled another one out, and I could continue.
Just kept right on marching.
Yeah. This is the last known postcard on Lenoir, and it is real significant. The date on the back is 1964. It is showing the monument in the center of the square where it always was.
All right.
Right after this postcard was made, they made the decision to move this out of that street and put it over in a corner. And I do know several fellers that we went to school with, Doug Wall being one of them. They actually wrapped themselves around that monument protesting its move, and he was arrested by the City of Lenoir Police Department.
So this was in 1964. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's marked 1964 aerial photograph.
And that was made by some aerial view people or plane place out of Charlotte, I think it was.
Yeah, and the script on the back says aerial view of Lenoir, North Carolina, county seat of Caldwell County. Lenoir is famous for its furniture products and is known as Furniture Land. More wood furniture is manufactured in Lenoir than any other place in the world.
And I believe that's since changed. I think High Point's come up.
Yeah.
Now,
Now this one, you got a lot of explaining to do with this one.
and I can't really explain it. What we're looking at now, the next series of cards are on the county of Caldwell County. This is coming out of Blowing Rock, down the mountain, and you have just come into Caldwell County. Now this is the old road. The new one is a lot better, but the old road that went over through there, there was a falls there, and it was called the Hinkle Falls. Now it went under the road, and I do know that, after the falls went off of the mountain up there. And evidently they thought that it created a geyser. I've not heard of anybody that knew anything about this, but it does say that the geyser on road from Blowing Rock to Lenoir, or Lenoir to Blowing Rock.
Now, do we know that there actually was a geyser there, or is this one of those pictures that perhaps some artist took some liberties with?
They might have took some liberties, because I have never heard of that geyser.
I bet this next one, I think, is the very same section, isn't it?
It's the same section, and it is showing, actually, you see the falls, and you see it disappear, so it's going under the road. But you see, you don't see a geyser in that one. And, you know, look, did the water quit, or did the geyser quit? I don't understand. But, you know, like we say, I think that one was one of those they played with a little bit.
Yeah, probably so.
Now, the next one is also the same view. But as before, we looked at paved highways. This is when it was dirt. And this one is showing Hinkle Falls from Lenoir to Blowing Rock.
It says Hinkle Falls on the Blowing Rock and Lenoir Turnpike.
And that's where a lot of people don't realize that the road from Lenoir to Blowing Rock was known as the Turnpike back in them days.
And it was a message from somebody. Looks like a message from Ruby to somebody.
Now, Mr. Scott, who had a photography studio in Lenoir, and he also had one in Newton, North Carolina. This one is stamped Scott, Newton, North Carolina. But this is a postcard picture of the train wreck in Sawmills down there, when they had that train wreck down there.
So they took a picture of the train wreck and they made postcards out of it.
Right. I have an aerial view of that wreck in a regular 8x10 picture, an original picture taken by Scott also.
Some good-looking houses sitting on the hill up there on the upper left side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, Bruce, this one says trout pool near Lenoir, North Carolina.
We have no idea where it is. We're talking about the county, which it could have been in the Globe, the Mulberry section, or, there was a lot of creeks around Lenoir. And so we just don't know where it is, but it just, the reason I collected it was because it said near Lenoir. So I know that it's in Caldwell County more per se, maybe.
And this was a postcard sent to some young lady at Salem Academy, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Just the message was hoping that she'd reach school okay. Now this one was printed by the Lenoir Drug Company, but actually printed in Germany.
The Lenoir Drug Company and also the Lenoir Book Company done a lot of postcards, and they were done in Germany.
All right, now this is the turnpike near Lenoir.
And it's saying that it's near the water gap. We don't think that that is Hinkle Falls. There was a big watering hole on the old road heading toward Blowing Rock, and either horse and buggies would come out or going up, that they would stop and water their horses or their livestock or whatever. And that's the reason it's called near the water gap. And we're not sure exactly where that is, but it's on the Lenoir Road heading to Blowing Rock.
Okay. And this one was sent to somebody in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Mrs. Agnes Martin, Strasburg. All right, here we have somebody that's getting ready to go over a dam.
Yeah, this is Mortimer. And the creek, and there's a guy out there in a boat, but the house on the left, the big house, that was known as the Hotel in Mortimer, which a lot of this stuff washed away in the 40 flood.
Yeah. And this one was published by the Lenoir Book Company.
Yeah. So there's the two companies already that we had that made postcards.
And this was postmarked 1907, sent to Miss Susie Pearson in Morganton, North Carolina. And just like we talked about in our first show, there wasn't a whole lot to addressing in those days. I mean, you just put the person's name and the name of the city. So I guess Miss Susie Pearson, Morganton, North Carolina, got this without any problems.
Without any problems, yeah.
Now this is a real fancy one.
Yeah, and it's the only one I've ever seen. But it says, "Greetings from Bayton, North Carolina." I didn't know that Bayton had a name back in those days. And this is a pretty early postcard, too.
Yeah, 1914 perhaps is the postmark on it. Hard to make it out, but
Now, is there another Bayton in North Carolina?
not that I know of.
I've not found one. I've done a little bit of searching, and I can't find the name Bayton anywhere. So,
Actually, it's postmarked Granite Falls.
Right. So you're in the same area.
Yeah, so it has to be Bayton, North Carolina, in Caldwell County. Sent to somebody up in Ohio.
Yeah. Now this card opens. It's got a thing writing on the back.
Right, the man who hesitates sometimes loses the girl.
Now that's possible. This is "Greetings from Collinsville, North Carolina," and it's showing the old steel bridge that the pillars are still there, but most of the steel bridge is gone. It has not been used in many, many years. And it might have washed out during the 40 flood, I don't know.
Yeah,
But there's one from Collinsville now.
very interesting. All right, this is one looking back down the mountain, I suppose?
Yeah, and it's actually, it's from Blowing Rock Conservatory, I think it says. Is that what it says? Observatory. Yeah.
Yeah, Lenoir, Blowing Rock, Lenoir Highway as seen from Blowing Rock Observatory.
And it's looking down the 321 road from Lenoir to Blowing Rock. This was one of the overlooks that they had up there. They used to have a lot of them, but don't have many anymore.
Not a lot of observatories up there now, is there?
Mm-mm.
From Blowing Rock can be seen a far-flung panorama of magnificent mountain scenery that is unsurpassed.
Had a way with words also.
Absolutely. All right, this one says, between Lenoir and Hickory, Woods Bridge, where is that?
I have no idea. I know that one of the first known bridges that came across the Catawba River down there was wooden, and this is 1919 that this was sent. And you actually see the date that they wrote.
Yes.
Here, I think it's August.
Yeah, it's hard to make out, but it is 1919, sent to somebody out in Oklahoma. But that's a picture of Woods Bridge between Lenoir and Hickory.
So here we've gone from coming into Caldwell County from Blowing Rock to coming in from Hickory.
All right, now here they describe Wilson Creek near Lenoir as Fisherman's Paradise.
Yes, sir. It's always been known as Fisherman's Paradise. Wilson's Creek has been known as the Gorge, and so that's where it comes down to Brown Mountain Beach, and it doesn't show a lot other than the water, but you know, it's just that it is a Caldwell County, per se, Lenoir postcard.
Now this, where is that?
This is when you're going up through the gorge and you get to a little place called Edgemont. And I'm not sure where this footbridge was. There was a train bridge that went across up there when they had a lot of industry up in there.
All right, now this is still up in that same area.
Same area. If you come from Edgemont down to the Wilson's Creek, you get to a place that's called Brown Mountain Beach. Been there for a long, long time.
And the writing on the card says Brown Mountain Beach, Attico, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now we've got some more water.
This is the dam up at Buffalo, which if you go 268 to Happy Valley, bear to the left going into Buffalo, and this dam is right up there a little ways up the road from there. Shows a lot of kids playing at it, and parts of that dam is still there today.
Yes. But on this postcard it's referred to as the Patterson School Dam.
Right.
So I guess that the school actually used that water. I wonder if they try to generate any electricity from it.
Well, if you see a building to the left,
Yeah,
they
the-
probably had a mill or a
Yeah.
water wheel or something at that time.
Yeah. All right, now we have some people.
Yes, sir.
So again, these are postcards, but did they take pictures of people to make postcards out of them?
Yes, sir. A lot of times they done that, and one of the places that done it in Lenoir was the Scott's Studio. Now this first one is my aunt and uncle and my cousin. Most people will remember Bill Teague as being the radio operator at the Sheriff's Department for years. He was in World War II and got an arm and part of a leg shot off. Mm-hmm. And he ran the radio there, and everybody knew him as Uncle Bill most of the time. And,
okay. And now who is your cousin there?
Billy Joe. She's Billy Joe Bolick now.
Okay.
But her mother and dad are deceased. Now this next one, this came out of an old photo album that I found, but this is James Colonel Holman and Sadie Holman. She was a Benfield. This is my grandmother and my grandfather. And I think my grandfather died in 1958 or something like that.
Mm.
Now, this one right here is there's an interesting story about this. This is my mother. At that time, she was Alberta Holman, that was her mother and dad you just seen.
Uh-huh.
I was going through some of her old pictures, and I found this guy, George Overcash. And I asked my mother who it was, and she said, well, I dated him. Said he came out of CC camp when I was young, and he'd come to Lenoir, and we would date. And so I knew a George Overcash over in Kings Mountain. So I went over there, and I said, do you know this man? He said, yeah, that's my father. So we talked to his father, and I gave him the picture of himself, and he said, wait a minute. And he went and got me that postcard and gave it to me of my mother.
So this is a picture of your mother,
1935.
December 1935.
17 years old.
Simply amazing, isn't it?
It is.
All right, now who's this distinguished looking gentleman?
This is J. Gordon Ballou. And he lost his hair at an early age. And we're going to learn a little more about him when we get to talking about the Ballou drugstore.
Well, he lost it well, didn't he?
He did. This is J. Gordon Ballou's sister. This is Mattie Mae Ballou. And actually I found out that she owned or lived in the Methodist church manse that we looked at in the first show.
Yes.
She was living in this house. But that is Mattie Mae Ballou. She owned the first dress or remnant shop in Lenoir. And it was at where you had the Avon Theater, and beside of it where you had the Chamber of Commerce. That little building right there was her building where she had the first dress shop in Lenoir.
All right, here we have another lady.
Now this is J. Gordon Ballou's wife, who is Florence Blair from Boone, and a lot of those postcards we seen in the earlier show was from Florence Blair, and they were sent to J. Gordon Ballou. This is J. Gordon and Mary Gordon. This is their brother. And the only thing I can figure, he lived up in Michigan. And the only thing I know about him, he had a nickname named, and it was Dude Ballou. Mm-hmm. And he looks like a dude in that picture.
He does. He is a dude. But he lived in Michigan?
Well, when he left Lenoir, he was born and raised here in Lenoir, and he moved to Michigan, and part of his family still live up there today.
Well, let's just go ahead and learn a little bit more about Mr. Ballou. Here's a picture of him when he had some hair. What is this one?
This is real early. It's somewhere he was born in 1877. And this is in 1895, maybe 96, inside of Kent Drugstore. He worked as a kid there, and he was known as the first soda jerk. This was the first soda fountain that we have record of in Lenoir, and it was inside the Kent Drugstore.
And what's fascinating also from the picture is the little Coca-Cola advertising there to the left of it, advertising Coke as the ideal brain tonic.
Right.
And we all know why they did that.
Now,
what is this next picture, though?
Well, I was going to say that for a while, he actually worked when he finished school in Michigan, he worked for a while in Maryland in a drugstore. He was afraid that there were too many drugstores in Lenoir at the time, and he could not make it because there was Kent, Lenoir Drug, and Scott's Drug, or Shell Drug, I'm sorry. And so he stayed up there for a while, and in 1914, he opened up what was known as the Blue Arcade Pharmacy. And that's what we have the picture of here. You're looking inside the Blue drugstore. This is across from Bernhardt and Siegel's. The Yellow Ribbon shop was in there for a long time. It had the hallway that was known as the arcade that could walk from one street to the other street through there. And you can, right in the middle, you can see Mr. Blue, and he's already lost part of his hair in 1914.
Yeah. And behind the soda jerk, up behind, sitting on top of the mirror, looks like a photograph of Robert E. Lee.
Mm-hmm. Now, the two gentlemen sitting in front of the soda fountain, I have two names. I'm not sure what it is, but that's the sheriff of Caldwell County. To the left, you can see that he has a sheriff's badge on.
He's wearing his badge.
And this was in 1914. The guy to the right was I.I. Davis, who owned a business here in Lenoir, and he also had a business over in Morganton, but his biggest was here in Lenoir.
Now, I think, Bruce, you also have a little story that you can tell about those stools in front of the counter there.
Yes, sir. The best we could figure out, there were 5 of those stools in front of that soda fountain. And I have messed around and went to yard sales and done things till I have found 3 of them.
And this picture was taken when?
1914.
So 3 of those stools that are there are currently in your possession.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. And you know, a lot of these businesses back in the early days, they would put out yardsticks, rulers, pencils, pens, fans. And this is one of the fans that was put out by the Cash Blue drugstore.
Now, was Cash the name of a business partner, or was he referring to when you bought something in his store, you had to pay cash?
That was it. He did not believe in credit. Now, at one point in time, and I do have an article written in the Lenoir News Topic, that he started a credit to people. And he found out that they liked to just come in and get it and say, charge it, and they'd walk out. So he put an article in the paper saying, we're going back to the cash days. And he puts, and that's where this came. This actually started out this way. The early thing was Cash Pharmacy, because he believed in paying cash for things that you got. He did try credit for a while, but he seen it didn't work. He wasn't getting his money, so he went back to the cash days.
Okay.
Now, we do have some medicine bottles that came from his, and it is actually embossed on the back.
Blues.
Cash.
Cash Pharmacy, Better Class Products.
Right.
Lenoir, North Carolina. So this is a medicine bottle from Blues Pharmacy.
Yeah, there were, I think there were 6 different sizes of those medicine bottles, and I'm missing the little teeny one. And the label that's on there was not there. I found those labels. I got in a lady's house in an attic over in Kentwood, and I was just going through a bunch of stuff, and I found probably 300 of these labels. And that is a pretty early label because of the phone number that's on there.
Yeah, the phone number is 16.
16, that was an early phone number. So that's an early label right there.
Yes. Okay, what are some other bottles?
Now this is also, if you'll notice that it's printed on the bottom down there of the bottle on the label, Blues Drugstore or Pharmacy. And I can't remember, is this a distilled?
This is double distilled witch hazel.
Yeah, witch hazel, okay. So you see, sometimes he would actually have medicine and he'd order it in a bottle and he'd have his name put on it.
Yeah, the bottom of the label says It says Witch Hazel, the E.E. Dickinson Company, Essex, Connecticut, but at the bottom it does say Blue Cash Pharmacy, Lenoir, North Carolina.
And I have other things that are powders and things that was not his, but his name is on them.
Now, this contains alcohol, 14%, absolute. A valuable local remedy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So,
Now, the other drugstores, we did have a J.E. Shell, who was the guy that produced a couple of postcards.
yeah,
And
I don't know
if that could
if
be,
we can pick that up on camera, but it does say J.E. Shell in Lenoir, North Carolina, druggist, I think, or drugstore or something like that.
mm-hmm. He was about where the Gateway Cafe wound up being. That's about where his drugstore was, on South Main Street. Now the next one, which was one of the earliest drugstores, I mean, I don't know whether Kent started out or Lenoir started out, one of the two. They were the two early ones. But this is Lenoir Drug Company, Lenoir, North Carolina.
And again, I don't know if we can pick that up on camera, but it does say Lenoir Drug Company, Lenoir, North Carolina.
And it actually started out in the building to the right of the county offices where the Irvin's men's shop used to be. Lenoir Drug was on the bottom floor or ground floor, and Lenoir Book Company was upstairs above it. And then eventually it moved across the street beside of where the antique store is now, and that was known as Lenoir Drug for a lot of years, where Earl Tate was in.
Okay.
Now, this one was where, to the right of the courthouse, in a little building where Lee and Robbins was. The city owns this building right now. Dr. Hedrick was in there for a lot of years, and there were some offices upstairs. And but this was known as Marley's Drugstore. And if you notice in one of Joe Hartley's pictures, he has Marley's Tea House, which is on the other side of the courthouse.
Yes.
And this was husband and wife. She ran the tea house and boarding house, and he ran the drugstore.
Okay.
So those things were associated with one another. And two, where the Marley's Tea House was, that was actually Major John Ballew's house. That's where Gordon Ballew grew up as a kid, in that house right there.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And they also owned the Avon Theater. They're the ones that built the Avon Theater. This is a pill box, and it was a prescription. It's got the name and the date and everything on it. But this was McNary's Drug, which was across the street from Lenoir Drug. It's where the Supreme restaurant is now. And so that was McNary's Drug, and there was a Dr. McNary. I think she had both businesses, run a doctor's office and had a drugstore at the same time. So she had the best of two worlds, I guess.
So how many drugstores have you been able to identify as having been in Lenoir?
Well, I do, and I don't know why I forgot them, but I have a few things on Davalt's drugstore, who was Frank Davalt. There are two that I'm missing. I have one little paper label on Kent Drug, is the only thing I have, and I have nothing on Crawford Drug. Crawford Drug was where, if you would think where the Carolina restaurant is on North Main Street, it was one door above that. And I talked to a fine black gentleman one day, and he was working at Crawford Drug in early of 1937. And that's when Frank Davalt came into Lenoir, and he bought out Crawford Drug. And he stayed there just a little while, and then he moved down on the corner, which was across from the old post office or Fidelity building on the corner there.
Yeah.
So that's where Davalt's wound up with. So I've got something on every drugstore except Crawford Drug and Kent Drug.
Okay.
So those were two good drugstores.
So you've got somebody's obituary here.
Yeah, this is December of 1950, and it is talking about J. Gordon Ballou, who has passed on, and it's his obituary. It says, pharmacist dies at age of 73, and he did own the Blues Pharmacy, which he started, built, and all of that. It talks about a lot of his family in here, which really, to me, tells about, because the Blue family was so significant about Lenoir, they actually owned from the corner of downtown Lenoir all the way up through the courthouse and to the end where the new courthouse is right now. They owned that whole corner right there at one time. And Gordon Ballou's grandfather was one of the guys that helped lay the town of Lenoir off. And there are, in the museum up there, papers showing all of the layout of Lenoir and when it got started, and the Blue family was significant in that.
All right, what's this other card you've got there?
Well, this is where a lot of times I run across things or stories and different things, and I'd heard about Charlie Robbins' cab stand. And so I got to asking people where it was, and they said it was on North Main, it was on West Avenue, it was on West Harper, East Harper, Mulberry Street, until one day I found this card. And that's what I like about actual things that say what they say. So this tells me where the Robbins cab stand actually started out at a time. Now, it did wind up on North Main Street eventually, but nobody could tell me where it was. But it started out in the Gateway Cafe. And he would sit in one of the booths in there and beside the phone and actually use the Gateway Cafe. I've got a phone book that has the Gateway Cafe phone number, and that's their phone number.
204.
That's not his, that's Gateway Cafe.
Gateway's.
So, you know, he was using their phone in their business. He just parked his cab outside and waited on the phone calls or people to come by for him. But look at some of the places in the...
Yeah, and I don't know if we can get a good shot of this, but this actually has the prices. From Lenoir to Valmead is 25 cents. To Whitnell, what is that, 35 cents? Miller Hill, 35 cents. Now, to get out to Kings Creek, it's going to cost you $1.50. Costs you $1 to get up to Patterson. 75 cents to Hudson, 75 cents to Gamble. So,
Well, at least by that, you know what it costs, but you also know what the surrounding area around
Yeah.
Lenoir. It tells
it
about
says
that.
these prices are for one passenger or a full load, so that part really didn't matter. But you can call him for prices to Hickory, Morganton, and surrounding towns. So he'll take you wherever you wanted to go.
Wherever you wanted to go.
Newest and best cabs in the city. Bruce, several months ago we did a show with Lois Bashirs, who lived out in the Valmead area, and in that show she talked about the ice plant and putting little cards outside their house to indicate how much ice or whatever the people were supposed to leave there. I'm thinking that what you've got here is what Lois was talking about.
Yes, sir. And to go along with that, as a small kid, and I'm talking 2 to 3 years old, my family lived in an apartment up over what was known as the Economy Auto in those days. It was, if you think of where Heinz Music Store was, that's the only building left on that corner. The rest of it is parking lot. But as you went up West Avenue, you had an old plumbing place and Western Auto, and we lived up over the Economy Auto, I'm sorry. And I'd make my mother, she would carry me down the steps from that apartment, and we would hang this sign. I would get to hang this sign on the door to indicate how much ice that we needed for that day. And the Lenoir Ice and Fuel used to deliver that. They actually started out with horse and buggy, and then they messed around with an automobile later on.
So you had your choice of 25 or 50, and each of these has a hole in it, so you hung it to indicate exactly.
Yeah. Whatever was hanging up at that time, that's how many pounds of ice that you would get. And they went by pounds. Or they had the blocks figured out, you know, as to what was the size was.
I wonder what size of ice.
Well, probably some of the stores that, you know.
Oh yeah, so this just wasn't residential.
Right.
This would be. So Lenoir Ice and Fuel Company, telephone number 140.
And it's still in the location today is where it started, which is out on Harper Avenue, right next to Fairfield Furniture out there.
Now this is the same kind of card, but the numbers are a little different. It goes from 50 to 100, 150, and 200, but it says use this card for oil delivery only.
Right, and that was kerosene or fuel oil. I think they had fuel at that time.
And it says hangout card, and trucks will make delivery of fuel oil or kerosene. Phone your coal orders to us and prompt delivery will be made.
Too, at an early age, I lived on Broadway Street, which was close to the Lenoir Ice and Fuel. And I used to take my little red wagon, and I'd go over there, and they would load it because I couldn't load it by myself. But it was a big bag of coal. They used to sell it by the bag, and it cost $1. And I'd get a bag of coal and take it up to the house where we lived on Broadway Street.
Well, it says no order too small and none too large for us. We want to serve you. All right, now what is this you've got here?
This is one of the original ice picks that came, and it has the same phone number of 140, Lenoir Ice and Fuel, phone 140. And they advertise that they have coal and ice.
Coal and ice. Save with ice. Food, flavor, money. Now, not sure what that means. Oh, you save food with ice. You save flavor with ice.
Right.
You save money with ice.
Because the ice protected your food longer.
Yeah.
You know, if it spoiled on you, then that means you lost
Lenoir Ice and Fuel Company. Call them at 140. Well, Bruce, once again, I appreciate you bringing some of your stuff by, and by no means have we looked at everything that you've got, and I hope that we can work out a schedule that we can have you back and take a look at some more of the items that you have.
Well, there are some items that are real interesting and they really mean a lot to the history of Lenoir, and we just need to save it and let the people see some of it.
And I know, based on the phone calls and the comments that we hear here, that people really do appreciate seeing and hearing about these, and we certainly are not experts in the history, and we'll sit here and talk about what we think is correct, but if anybody has additional information to give us about any of these things that we're looking at, or histories about any of the families or any of the businesses or products, certainly we appreciate them calling and letting us know that. But, and if you don't mind, if people are interested in any of these things, or if they know the location of anything that you might be interested, is it okay that they contact you directly?
Absolutely. I would encourage phone calls. If I'm wrong about something, then I want to be correct. And so if they know more than what I have found out, then that's what I'm after. I'm after, you know, to get it as close or as exact as the business could be, you know. So that's my point, is to find that out.
So if people have additional information or want to talk to you about any of these kinds of things, they can call you at home?
Absolutely. They can call me at 754-7330. They can leave a message, or they can catch me by chance.
Okay. Well, Bruce, thanks for coming again, and we'll look at our calendars and see if we can figure out a time to have you back, because I know you've got a lot more items to look at.
I look forward to it.
Okay. But I hope you've enjoyed today's show, and thank you very much for watching Caldwell County Today. This program is a production of the Caldwell County Public Information Office.
More photos and videos of Lenoir, North Carolina can be found at Lenoir and Caldwell County History on Facebook, and also on YouTube. Just Google Bill Tate YouTube videos. Please support our Caldwell Heritage Museum, 112 Vaden Street, Lenoir, North Carolina, 28645, now in association with Lenoir and Caldwell County History on Facebook.